Oh, hello, my beautiful people. This week we have a very unique scenario that I really feel is groundbreaking. Like, Matt and I are truly pioneers in the industry. And so what we decided to do was I let Matt invite me on his podcast for a generous BS session. And when we got on record, he decided, and by we I mean he, decided that it was going to be a cool opportunity to either share an episode or split an episode. And due to my inability to prepare, we decided to share it. And so we just kind of took turns having a conversation. I guess taking turns having a conversation isn't really a thing. We just had a good conversation about hunting and scouting and goals and life and so on and so forth. And so we're going to share this episode. So you'll find that this exact episode is available on the Mobile Hunters Dojo as well as the Angell Road Outdoors podcast. And we are not going to be upset if you choose to only listen to it at one spot. Totally cool. It was just a great opportunity for the both of us to have an episode this week. And I love talking with Matt. He's just one of those genuinely great people. And so I hope you enjoy this BS session with Brett from Angell Road Outdoors and Matt of the Mobile Hunters Dojo. And here it is. This episode is brought to you by Beefcakes. Beefcakes is not your traditional gym. If you want to lay down between bench presses, go ahead. You want to pee outside? That's fine. Just be mindful of my neighbors. Do you want to not clean up your dumbbells when you're done with them? Go right ahead. Just be prepared for some ridicule. Do you want a chocolate fountain? Do you want a nacho bar? Perhaps you'd like to sit down on one of our fine leather couches and play NHL 22 on the Xbox. Cool. That's great. If you're tired of a traditional big box gym and you still want to get that pump but maybe have a snack, Beefcakes is the gym for you. Come see us today at Beefcakes.
Pace. Off.
Man, as a hockey guy, I grew up playing hockey my whole entire life. The idea, the symbolism behind a face-off, the mano a mano, the culmination of all your hard work and the intensity when it matters most, truly symbolizes the pursuit of wild game, whether it's deer or turkey or elk or whatever. You have practiced your whole season or your whole off season for that single defining moment, whether it's on the ice or whether it's against, your formidable opponent, that mature white-tailed deer or that wily can't seem to figure out turkey. I struggle with turkeys, if you can't tell by my nervous giggling. Face-off e-bikes, formerly known as stealth hunting e-bikes. Same great bikes, just a brand new name. A little rebranding had to occur to sort of identify ourselves, clearly and on the internet. But it's the same great brand. It's the same innovation. It's the same everything that you had at Stealth Hunting e-bikes, just with a new name. These bikes are built and shipped from Michigan, so that is near and dear to my heart. By actually tearing apart and assembling these bikes, he's got this access to replacing parts and creating the perfect mobile to climb these hills. And I am not a slender fellow. I do like my sugars and I like my fried foods, but I'm moderately healthy. I'm 6 foot and I'm over 200 pounds, and I have been putting my bow hunter to the test here in Michigan because I knew that this bike could help me in those scenarios where I needed to climb a hill, whether it be a chisel-plowed cornfield or just some terrain here on my private properties in Michigan. I knew that it could get me from point A to point B, and I have been testing it, and it absolutely gets me where I need to be quickly and quietly. It was incredibly easy to get this bike to my house and do the final assembly in my garage. the entire lineup, honestly, is geared to climb these hills. Custom configured drivetrains and custom fabricated parts. These bikes are suited for the steepest terrain. Now, I haven't done anything crazy like test them out at Attack or any ski hills, but I've seen Dieter do it. Smallest front chainrings in the industry, offering the same motors and batteries as the biggest names in the industry, but at a fraction of the cost. So listen, if you want to make every hunt count, make sure you're using face-off hunting e-bikes.
So I don't know, like I've noticed lately with the podcast, at least for me, like in the last couple of weeks, my numbers dipped down, and I don't think it's because of lack of like good content or anything. Mm-hmm. I think turkey season jumped up and people are sick of hearing about deer.
Do you really believe that?
I think on some level, yeah. I've watched a lot of the guys who I just kind of follow on a regular basis, all of a sudden just switch off for all full turkey mode. Do you turkey hunt?
Well, I tell myself that I'm going to turkey hunt every year, and then I will for a little bit, and then I will tell myself, Brett, you hate turkey hunting. Why do you do this to yourself? And then I hang it up, and then I usually give it one last hurrah at the very end of my whatever my tag says, and then I say, man, do you hate that? Why do you do this? And then I'm in a vicious cycle right now. So I have a tag. I'm gonna go hunting, but I was in the hockey rink all weekend.
Oh, indoors then I take it, right?
Yeah, my son had so he's on a travel team, but they do this tournament every spring to figure out where they're gonna place as caliber wise come fall season. And so they had this weekend and they got their butts kicked.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah, we did the whole travel. We still are. Well, the kids are getting into high school sports now, so they're not allowed to do it during this time period. I guess they can do it during the summer, so we'll still have it then. But yeah, we've done that for a lot of years. My daughter plays soccer, and so we've traveled all over for that. And then my son is into lacrosse, and luckily, like that hasn't been very far. It's just been kind of local. Yeah, maybe an hour or two. So
that's plenty.
When you got two of them doing it, though, it's we never see each other. Like my wife and I never see each other. We're driving all over.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what happened to Little League, dude? Like I had Ace Hardware sponsored me.
Yes.
Like I sold some candy bars that I gave to my dad. And then I just showed up to the same field like every day. And no one cared. Like I never practiced. You know, now the kids are like practicing like they're like already in D1 sports when they're in like middle school. It's insane.
Did you see Kevin post that about youth sports recently?
Yeah, I actually agree with him. I'm even though I'm in it and I do it and like I agree with him 100%. Like,
me too.
It drives me nuts. Like it's one of those things that I like go, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I disagree with it.
Yep. But. And I put my foot down because I lived it and it burnt me out and I was very resentful for a period of time. And I decided when my son decided to play that I would choose a different path on how I pushed or didn't push. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very cognizant of what the expectations are of parents and kids today versus what the reality is. And it's all money grab.
Oh, it is.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I never my daughter is just crazy driven. So there was like, I could care less what they did with sports. Like to me, it wasn't as long as whatever you do, as long as you try your best.
Yeah.
That's all I care about. And, but she is like, she is like that Michael Jordan like mentality, she is
amazing.
Like a force. And then my son is, my son's more like me back in Little League, just kind of shows up, doesn't practice ever except for when he's with his team.
Oh, that's funny.
And just has fun. He could care less.
Nice.
So, how's your scouting going so far? Like, how you feeling about next year?
No, I don't.
Is it too early to ask that question?
No, it's not. And I think I started my scouting last year in March. So, realistically speaking, if we were looking at a calendar, if I were just starting, I'd be late. I found those sheds last year in mid-March. So, I have scouted as much as I can squeeze in right now. So, and I think we probably talked about this, my territory shifted. So I don't go to Illinois at all. And with that, it's hard for me to justify an overnight stay because I'm so close. Whereas if I were staying overnight, who cares how long I was in the woods? I was just going to a hotel. And so my scouting has really been suffering this year. I went to Illinois one time and I went exactly where I wanted to go. Like last year when I went to that state land, I feel like I figured out where I wanted to hunt and it worked. And then I said, you know what? I need to better understand a few more of these areas just in case. And so the one time that I went, I spent the whole weekend there. And in fact, I think you were in Illinois at the same time.
Yep.
I went exactly where I wanted to go. It was the exact right time to be there. I feel like I learned exactly what I needed to learn. And I think I was really in the best area last time. I don't think there's anywhere else I need to be. The one thing I will say is I have already had so many people on camera this year. And that's the way it goes.
Mushrooms and turkey, though. I mean,
it's deer and turkey. So I just had a turkey hunter on yesterday, I think, and he is exactly where the turkeys are. So good for him. He figured it out. But there's a lot of big toms in that park. I've heard them gobbling. I've seen them running around, and they're always on my camera in this one spot. And that dude was right there. So, it is what it is. It's part of it. I'm not naive to think that last year may have been a fluke not seeing people, and I'm willing to adapt if I need to, go somewhere else if I have to. As far as Ohio is concerned, though, that's where I'm struggling. I haven't been able to take a lot of time. I haven't tried to take a bunch of time. I've tried to squeeze it into work trips, and I'm struggling.
Yeah, I'm struggling really. Like, it's my worst scouting season, I think. It's been tough. I went to Illinois 3 or 4 times, sometimes multiple days, sometimes one day. I've scouted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different pieces.
Nice.
But I have not found sign. So like the first place I went to, I found that matching set of sheds that like fell like 10 yards off of a bike trail right next to a picnic table. So I got there and like that place was wide open. I could just see forever, like beyond it being, postseason. Like it was just something that would probably always look like that.
Okay.
The trees were like, 100-year-old trees. There's no undergrowth and it's just wide open. And wherever there was any kind of like thick stuff, there was a tree stand there.
Right.
And the numbers were low for that area as far as what deer were taken out of there. But there just wasn't any sign, so I left. And I went to another place where numbers were better, not too high, not too low, scouted for 12 hours one day, made a clip about it, and did not find any sign. And at the end of that clip, it's so funny. Like, I think about clips when you watch, like, even the ones I put up and you watch other people's, like, being someone who makes content, and you make it with like a pure heart. Like I never want to make content like staged or like anything made up.
Yeah.
But at the end of the 12 hours, like I made a Hail Mary and I'm like, I'm going to run to this spot. The sun's going down. I get in there and it opened up with sign. And I'm like, I come back and I'm like, I do this motivational, like stick with it. Like,
yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. And then the next day I went back and the sign died like 10 yards further from where I left off. And I scouted, like I went in for like 4 more hours and it just was like gone. And so I left that spot. Like it wasn't like this rocky motivational thing where like, I find it at the end, I come back and it all makes sense and I'm going to have that set up. No, it just died on me. But, I ran into some locals there and a local, and the local was showing me like 140s and bigger, and they've taken a few out of there. He was really nice and sharing a lot of info, which is kind of strange. But I just didn't see the sign to go along with it. So I left. I scouted with a couple other people that I've met through here, which is fun. I got to learn a little bit. So, but I'd never, like, if I do that, I've never scouted with somebody before. So if you find sign, I'm not going to hunt it. Like, that's how I am. I just can't do it. And what I found myself doing every time I went with these guys, who are dear friends now, is I just kind of backed off and let them kind of lead, because they are like more of that upper echelon type of hunter.
Okay.
And I was trying to learn from them, so I backed off. They weren't necessarily there scouting for them. They were scouting there with me.
Okay.
But they were finding the sign. I wasn't aggressive enough to kind of go in and just claim it. So I wrote those spots off because I'm like, that's the only spot I felt like we were in sign that I really liked. But I just can't go back knowing that somebody else found it. It's just, I'm weird like that.
Does it turn you off when you find stands?
Yes and no. It depends.
Like, do you stand there and do you look at the stands and then you look around and you try to think about what it is that person saw?
Always.
And do you look? I mean, do you weigh the type of stand? Is it a climber? Is it a ladder? What's the age and the straps? Do you go through that whole rigmarole?
Yeah, I do for sure. Well, if I find any stand, I discredit it as being a good spot. Not because somebody else found it, because I assume they burned it out.
Oh, I gotcha.
So if I find evidence of a mobile, like someone putting sticks on a tree, which I one time I went up and I actually was putting my sticks on a tree and found marks on that tree.
Really?
And I was like, it made me actually more confident. I was like, all right, 2 guys looked at this and both felt like this was a good spot to be in. But the ladder stands and stuff like that. So I look at a ladder stand and I immediately think gun season. So I don't really care about it. I'll hunt right next to a ladder stand.
Okay.
A climber, I feel like a climber that's been left out there on the tree, to me it could be a bow hunter, could be a gun hunter, but they use it over and over again. They use it on that tree only.
Yeah.
And so that spot's burned. I don't think a ladder stand equals a burned spot.
Nice.
And then a permanent, if the permanent looks newer, then I will probably avoid that spot or try to find out how the deer are playing off of that person. If it's an older one, I might hunt it. I might hunt that area. Yeah.
That's what I did too. When I went to this park, I came across what I thought was an incredible topography, and I'm like, I need to be here. And I'm not kidding. I get right there, and there's a freaking permanent set there, but it was a death trap. Like, nobody has been in that stand in a long time. Like, the tree is almost eating it again. Yeah. And I'm like, there's nobody coming out here, and who knows the last time anybody even looked at this thing. So I get discouraged. I get really discouraged because usually I have really gone out of my way to get somewhere, and I've really put a lot of effort into getting to the spot. And I get there, I'm like, you got to be freaking kidding me, man. But a lot of people will reach out when I will post that. A lot of people will reach out and say, hey, man, you gotta get past that. You really got to get past it. And that's just. And I'm willing to say, it's my inexperience hunting public land that's messing with me. And it's true. I just got to get past it.
Yeah. I guess I've hunted public for so long that I expect tree stands being everywhere I want to go. Like the only thing that stops now is water somewhat, but people are getting used to that. And then, which I got a funny story about that. And then, pain. Like things that cause pain. That's so if I can get into like a briars or stinging nettle, something like that, like a huge, like big old, like real difficult to get through. That then I'm all for it. Nice. I'm like, if I got to crawl on my hands and knees to get through like real thick stuff, then I'm feeling it. I'm like, great, nobody's going to be back here. And if I find a stand at that point, then I feel like totally deflated. Like if I've gone through all that and they're there, I'm like, ah.
Yeah. Is there a time of year, is there a time in spring where you will pump the brakes on scouting until, a little bit closer to season?
No,
you'll just go right on through. Because I know, like you said, there's a lot of guys that, okay, it's turkey season or green up has now officially happened. And so it is much more difficult to see things. I didn't know if that was maybe like your cue to cool it a little bit and then come back a little bit closer to season.
So I cool it out of state. I should say that because it is much more difficult to see what's going on over there. But then I kick in local and I don't stop. Like local is going to go all the way through until October 1.
Yeah.
So, yep. So it was funny. I went scouting with a guy last weekend and we came across this little creek and like it was deep, like it cut down, but the water we found out how deep the water was. It was probably just over our knee.
Okay.
And we're looking at, and it's not that wide, but you might be able to make it, but there's a good chance you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
And I'm with him. He's like, man, I don't know what we're going to do. I'm like, I'm just going to walk right through it. He's like, what? I'm like, we're just going to walk through the water and up on the other side, And it's funny how water messes with your mind a little bit,
A lot of, like you said, most human beings do not want to be uncomfortable in the slightest, whether that's sweaty or cold or wet or itchy or rashes from poison ivy or like stinging nettle. Hell, I think I got stung so much by stinging nettle that one year that it was making me almost delirious. I think I was a little dehydrated because it was hot. I think my legs were just poked from the briars and stung from the nettles, and I honestly think it was messing with my brain. I don't know if that's a real thing, but it felt like it.
No, I actually sat in a puddle one time because of stinging nettle.
Yeah.
Because it was messing with I was just going nuts.
Yeah.
And I remember I took off my pants and I'm out there in my boxers, sitting in a muddy puddle, just trying to get the stinging to stop off my legs.
Unreal.
Yeah. It's nasty.
So that right there, that's where you want to be, everybody.
That's where I want to be. That's what I look for. Yeah.
Well, I think I told you that sea of stinging nettle that I found last year, the deer were just devouring it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a fact.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Dan. Dan was talking about Infalt. He was talking about them eating stinging nettle, that they love it. Yeah, I went to a spot last weekend and I was by myself and I went way in the back and it was brutal. So it looked amazing. They had like cow pasture size runs. There's no cows there. I suspect there used to be because it kind of lays out like that.
Yeah.
It looks very like Kansas type of like layout.
Okay.
And not many places to hang a tree. Everything's like really small, bushy, few trees here and there. And I mean, I'm talking like this wide. I took video of it. It was amazing. It's I mean, just beat down, but no rubs and no scrapes. But these trails were everywhere. Like the amount of deer traffic was insane. But I couldn't find any rubs or scrapes. And that has been my experience this year in Illinois. I had only one location ever been able to find them. All the rest, I've just struck out. You know, a little bit here, one there, but nothing that says like, oh, this is a great spot I want to hunt.
And now, are you able to get past that and hunt it anyway?
Yeah, I'm going to have to. This will be the year that I have to get past that. I like this. I don't need it to be crazy, but I'd like to see some type of pattern.
Something.
Yeah. And I just haven't seen any of the places. I can get past rubs. I really want scrapes.
Mm-hmm.
Scrapes just make me feel better. I feel like it just means like, you know, when I think of scrapes, I immediately go, okay, why? Where's the doe bedding?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so when I see multiple scrapes laid down, I immediately assume that there's doe bedding around, and then most of the time I can find it. And that means when I'm hunting in the rut, there's going to be bucks in there. I mean, even if they're not hitting the scrapes at that time, I know they're in the area and the scrapes were there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Rubs can be a lot of different things, you know, and I think you definitely can find, you know, rubs that lead to bedding and all that good stuff too, but you can find just random rubs throughout as well.
Yeah.
And you can have doe bedding where there's no bucks and bucks show up during the rut. So scrapes make me feel good. Not finding scrapes this year, I feel really uneased. But I'm going to play the topography, and because all the places that I scouted have great topography that should hold big deer.
Mm-hmm.
And good cover.
I struggle, and I believe I mentioned this before. I really struggle to find that primary scrape. And I always have.
Oh, yeah.
And again, that was one of those things that I really wanted to dig into this year, was get into the bottom, and the bottom is massive, and I didn't know that last year. And so I really got in there and I really followed every drainage. I tried to find that hub scrape, and I'm telling you what, man, I found 2 scrapes outside of the one that I made, and like 4 rubs. And there are so many bucks out there. I know they're there, but I just have not been able to find the sign. So it's a little counterintuitive. Like, I know they're here. I saw them. I know that they survived because I saw them after the season, but I'm not finding their sign where the people say the sign should be. So What does that mean? Is it just an area where the bucks aren't laying a lot of sign, yet are still using? If it weren't for pictures, I probably would have overlooked it.
Which is one of the questions I actually wrote down here to talk about today. So for whatever reason, I think I change a little bit my views on hunting every year.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would say 5 years ago, it's just all about getting like, I could care less about the process. I just wanted to kill a big buck.
Yeah.
You know, maybe 7 years ago, where I just wanted to, like, I could care less even about learning. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, I was just like, I got to get a big buck down. That's all I care about. And then it became more of like, I got into like the grind. I'm going to outgrind I'm going to walk. And then I found out like Jake Bush does 1,000 miles and I'm never going to do that. So, so then I changed my idea about hunting again.
Mm-hmm.
And this year I'm at a spot now where adventure means like everything to me. I just want to experience adventure, which means traveling for me is part of that. And has expanded to sharing that adventure with people now. So that's new. But now I also want to go more woodsman, like really develop my woodsmanship. And this thought process came in my head was like, do I pull my cameras? Do I not use cameras this year? But what you just said, I was scouting a piece today, not because there's a bunch of sign there. It's because I had a camera there last year, and I picked up on a pattern during a 2-week time period where, I mean, some really big bucks were walking. This is in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went in there to kind of break it down today, and I didn't find big buck sign. So without the cameras, I would not know that they're going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm torn. I'm torn on, wanting to develop more of this like adventure, fly by the seat of my pants, go out there, read the sign in the moment, and give and maybe take what God gives me, on a certain level. But now I'm like, man, I really got to run more cameras in the spot. So I'm at odds with myself. Do you ever find yourself like that, where you're just kind of like battling yourself on some of these thought processes?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Last year we had discussed running our cell cams all summer for inventory and then turning them off come season in Michigan only. And so that meant I had made friends with the fact that I don't need it on our private piece. Like I don't need them, but what I learned later is that I love them. And I don't, in out of state stuff, it was my boots on the ground. Like I couldn't be there as much. Like I couldn't do an observation sit 6.5 hours away. Doesn't work. Yep. And so it never crossed my mind that I didn't want to use them there, but at home it did. And then I learned that I just like to see the deer. I just like to look at deer. I like to look at big, beautiful does, the fawns as they grow. I like to look at the bucks as they develop antlers and they grow all season, and how they will sometimes interact with the camera and interact with each other. Like I just like to look at deer. And so then I think we turned them off for a month, and I was like, you know what? I just miss seeing all the deer, and I turned them back on. So yeah, I have. I don't know. I don't see myself getting to that point out of state. Because I really just try to take it all in when I'm there and learn. And so I don't feel like I'm at a point where I'm missing anything right now as far as what I should be doing. I am trying to become a better woodsman. I am trying to learn every time I'm there. I am using cameras as a supplemental resource for reconnaissance. I just am. I'm just going to use all the tools at my disposal.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and I'm not anti-camera, and I know people who have woodsmanship that I would, I mean, they have more in their thumb than I do in my whole body, and they use 30, 40, 50 cameras.
Oh yeah,
but today it happened. Like this thing happened that reinforced why I wanted to do it. And the funny thing is me stopping the cameras won't stop this thing from happening. You asked about, do I get deflated when I see tree stands? Not as much. When I get deflated is when I see a trail camera.
Okay.
And I don't know why. But I think because now I know that person knows what's there.
Mm-hmm.
And which means they're more likely to try to hunt it.
Yeah.
And I came across what I thought was a primary scrape. And I was so excited because I thought I was, super ninja moving through the woods. Like I was really taking my time and really trying to break down this piece. And I'm like, according to the way this all lays out, there should be a primary scrape over in this. And I walk over there and I run into it. And this thing's the size of a car hood.
Yeah.
But something stood out to me, though. I'm looking at it and the licking branches didn't fit the scrape underneath it. And the depth wasn't there for a primary scrape. It was just really wide. And it was deep in one little area about the size of the scrape that it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that messing with my head, and I'm like, well, I guess maybe they don't get as aggressive over here. Maybe they're just kind of just a little on the licking branches.
Yeah.
Marked it, was super excited, like, okay, I'm putting the pieces together. I turn around, and that whole time I'm on camera.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody else's camera's there.
Yeah.
And it just kind of really, I went like, oh, I'm so sick of cameras. Because I'm public. Like, I don't know how many you run into, but I run into cameras almost, I don't want to say every scrape. That's an exaggeration, but it seems like a good number of scrapes that I find, I will find a camera on it or near it.
So you know what I'm finding them on? Mineral sites. in our
Illinois.
in our non-baiting and mineral state, I'm finding obvious mineral sites and cameras on them. And then when I was in Ohio, I would find them on some of the planted fields that they had out there. It just and it's like every 20 yards on the edge of the field, there's a different camera. I'm like, so there's 4 dudes with cameras on this one field. Crazy.
Yeah. I see. If I saw that, I would write off a piece.
Well, so someone had sent me that pin. He's like, hey, you should check this out on your way back home. And I was like, hey, man, just so you know, I went there and you don't want to waste your time. And he was like, oh, man, I don't worry about cameras. I'll out hunt him. And he probably would, but this was a pretty small piece. And anyway, yeah. So I'm not finding people that find the scrapes in the public. I'm finding them like, I'm going to make this where the deer come because they're illegally baiting or using minerals.
Well, that's what I think that scrape was. I actually think when I look at it, I don't think it was a mineral site, but I think they made it.
Got it.
When I look at it, after I saw the camera, everything kind of made sense to me. The one section that was deep and kind of like encaved, like meant that it was used year after year. That was a very small scrape. Mm-hmm. It would be one that I would mark, but I might throw a camera on it because you never know what you'll find. Mm-hmm. But it wouldn't be one that I would like maybe set my game plan off of. It would, right. If that was, and it was part of a scrape line. That's what I would have set my game plan off of, that whole line, trying to figure out how they're going to use that. But once I came across it, it was like a car size hood. I thought, okay, maybe I'm going to have to strategize off of this scrape.
Yeah.
Well, you can see that I think the guy just made it like as big as it was.
Right.
Because the rest of it didn't fit. It just didn't. I knew when I looked at it, it just looked weird, but you see weird things in the deer woods sometimes.
Hell yeah, you do. Do you ever, so you use Onyx, right?
Oh yeah.
Yep. Do you ever, sort of assess your pins and in the topography and maybe zoom out and sort of try to big picture the travel corridors, or are you just kind of real focused in on your pins all the time?
Oh man, I wish I was. I mark them and then I rarely use them again.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
why is that?
Like, because what I do is I mark them and then as I'm there, I get a feeling and I'm like, this is where I want to put a camera. And then I put my cameras where I want to put them. And then I'm basing everything off of the movement that I'm seeing on the camera.
Got it.
And then I am still the kind of guy that's going to go in and then I don't hunt the cameras, which is funny. Like I'm basing where I'm going to be. Like, so let me back up. On this piece, it's a 6,000 acre piece. So I'll put 25 cameras out on this piece. That's what I did last year. I didn't hunt it at all last year. Mm-hmm. And then based off of where I'm getting action, that's where I'll start to focus in on. And then I might pull out my Onyx and then examine, okay, I've got this scrape over here. I've got this going on. And I'll go back in to see if those scrapes are being hit. Mm-hmm. But it's a very much like in the moment. It's based off of like the movement I'm getting on the cameras. And it's not so much like I'm making a game plan, because really I'm kind of like all over the map. I don't have like a huge strategy when I go into a season. Mm-hmm. Like I'm sitting back and I'm like, I feel like this piece over here is going to be good today based on, I'm always watching the weather at all my places. Yeah. And then making a decision like now's the time to go into those spots.
Yeah.
So that's just me being probably underdeveloped as a deer hunter. It's hard for me to keep all of that in my mind and strategy all in my mind and have a game plan because there's so many pieces. Like I'm hunting Illinois, I'm hunting Nebraska, Indiana, Michigan.
Yeah.
I kind of got to just fly by the seat of my pants a little bit. I mean, obviously, like last year was a unique situation where I put a lot of strategy and a lot of thought into that. But other times it's more winging it.
We talked about this. What you're doing is you say underdeveloped hunter. I say someone who's able to make split decisions on a really quick basis in his brain where he doesn't need to write everything down. Like you're doing all those mathematical equations in your head as it relates to hunting to where you don't need to. And so, yeah, the reason I ask is because this year I started using all their little extra tools, and I'll like draw a little circle, an area that I think is bedding, and I'll shade it in brown. And then I'll draw, if I see that the deer are moving in a specific direction more frequently, I'll draw an arrow on my map and what appears to be the direction that they're traveling. And then I'll zoom way out and I'll go, where the fuck are they coming from? Like from a big picture, like are they 3 properties over? Are they cutting on this weird angle and hitting this scrape that's on the ag field and then coming on this angle? Like I'm trying to figure out big picture. And I think the reason that I started doing it this year is because now there's people out there. Where last year it was like, oh, whatever, I get the whole place to myself. Well, this year I've seen people more frequently. You know, am I going to have to out hunt this guy or these guys that are going to be out here? And how do I, if they know that I've got a camera here, are they going to try and cut me off? It's almost, I'm almost a little turned off by the property, which is weird to say, because I know there's good deer out there. And it's such an awesome opportunity that this lady lets me walk through the farm to get to the back corner. But now I'm not the only one. And now there's guys that are up in my business. And yes, that's public land hunting, but I'm not going to lie, I'm a little turned off by it.
I bet, though, when you go out there, you realize there's not as many guys as you think. Like, that's what I find.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, I've hunted a lot of public, and I've hunted a lot of, like, different states. And I'll run into people every once in a while. But most of the time I'm by myself. It took me a little while to get over that. Like, I remember like pulling into parking lots and seeing a car and taking off. And like 5 or 6 years ago, I pulled in and like place was packed, and I go in and I killed a buck like within 15 minutes. And I was like, well, maybe this isn't so bad. And then I started doing that, and I realized as I was out in the woods, I never ran into those people I saw like that were parked in that parking lot. Last year in Indiana, I ran across a guy who was like sitting down, like, I talked about it before. He's like sitting Indian style, and like nothing on his back. Like, I don't know how he has that posture to sit like that the whole time. And I went probably 100 yards from him and set up, and so he's right down the hill from me. But where I was at was the right spot. He wasn't in the right spot, and I saw deer all morning.
It's funny you say that.
I've learned to get past that.
My legs just went numb thinking about sitting Indian style. Good Lord.
And it's still, too. I mean, he was like, this guy could be an amazing hunter if you could just get like the techniques together, because I walked up on him. I thought he was a log. I mean, his camo was amazing, and he didn't move. And even when he saw me, he kind of slowly turned like an owl, like his head just like rotated all the way around, and he didn't say a thing. And I just kind of like walked off. I'm like, all right, well, I'll leave you alone.
That is awesome.
Yeah. I still like have no idea what he was thinking sitting on the ground like that, but yeah, it was pretty cool. So, I don't know. You can kind of hear me like I'm just kind of going through. This is what I found myself doing in the woods today. I tend to pick apart myself, and I think it's healthy.
I agree.
I'm constantly thinking like, what do I like? What don't I like about what I'm doing right now? And it kind of changes. It might change from. It could change from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, what I'm thinking. It could change year to year. But I'm going through this process of things that I want to change right now about myself. Do you have anything going on like that right now? Or do you have a list of things that you want to change for this upcoming season?
So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say there's a list. I made a goal when I was in Kansas at the end of last year. I made a list before I came home of some of my goals for 2024, and they've evolved. I really want to hunt early season public land so as not to burn out our really nice private piece, because I think that's what happens inevitably, and then I'm frustrated all season there. So I really want to hunt some more early season public. I really want to learn swamps, and because it's one of the things. So I learned hunting period when I came back to Michigan. Like I've ag country, and then I really dug in with the Mobile Hunter Roadshow and 2 years in a row and learning about thermals, and not that I'm some expert in it, but I really feel like I grasp it now and I understand how to read that type of land. But a part of hunting that I just don't understand is swamps and how to navigate them and what to look for. And I listened to a lot of David Riley talk about, hunting swamps and so on and so forth. I know there's other great guys. That's just the first name that came to my head. But I really want to learn swamps this year, and I want to at least do a couple sits in the swamp somewhere. So that I find that during the off season, I get in my head a lot about my shot process to the point where I'm actually making mistakes. And for me right now, it's just reps. It's just continuing to shoot every single day. And instead of, talking my shot process through in my head, that actually makes it worse for me. I'm more of a feel guy. And I don't know about you. It was one of my questions for you was, do you consider yourself like an expert marksman, or are you just a good archer?
Good archer.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I can get in the kill zone every shot, like, but I'm not dropping, dimes every single time. And I think as long as I get my mechanics are comfortable all year long, I'm relatively happy. It's when I start thinking, I got to really think through step by step and I got to say it in my head, I start making mistakes. So getting past that as well are probably my biggest goals right now.
Yeah, I have my goals that I set. I set those in January every year. This is more like a ongoing like assessment of how well I'm doing. And that's probably why it changes. So like as I'm out in the woods today, one thing that I noticed, or what I've always wanted, like I've noticed about myself, is I move too fast when I'm scouting.
Yeah.
Like I'm flying through, because a lot of times, it's new area. And I think some of that, like, because I roam and because I want adventure, I feel like that holds me back from really learning a property well.
Mm-hmm.
And so since I'm on a new property all the time, or a lot of the time, I'm like just running to try to figure out the overall, like what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so I found myself in the last couple of years coming back to a spot here in Michigan that I still haven't hunted, but I'm scouting and I'm learning it. And today I moved slow. I was just really kind of, like letting myself wander. I had an idea where I wanted to go, but as things caught my eye, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to rush it. I'm just going to move over there. And if I don't make it to my spot today, then I'm going to make it out there another day.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm going to eventually make it over there. And I would just move slow and break things apart. And I was finding things I don't know even how to use yet, like,
yeah.
Actually, no, I did learn. There was this twig that was broken off. And the way that it was broken off, I was like, I think a buck did that. I think a buck was moving through here and it did that. And as I kind of zoomed in on it, all of a sudden I saw the run. Like it was a faint run. And I'm like, there it is. And I followed it through, and there was some like old heritage sign there that showed that bucks had used that area. But anyways, so that was one where I actually gave myself a kudos. I'm like, good, I'm moving slow now. But I will like have this list about myself throughout the years where it's like, okay, you're moving too much. Like during in season, my gripes about myself at times is I'm moving too often. I think that's a strength of mine. But like I tell my kids, I like your superpower is also can be used as your weakness against you. And so my superpower is I won't get stuck. I won't freeze in a tree. I'll get down and move and get to where I need if I see action or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think at times I do it too much. So anyways, I just have this list of things that I want to change or improve on, and that's that continuous mindset mentality. And I feel like it makes me a better hunter by being able to criticize myself a little bit and be real and be like, this, you're messing up because you keep doing this. Telling myself the truth, truth bombs.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That first year I got a saddle, I was like, what different tree can I be in this afternoon? Like I was barely settled up in my first morning sit, and I'm like, all right, where am I going this afternoon? God forbid I stick it out for a couple hunts. That definitely that was a major learning curve for me is being confident in my decision. And although you might want to tweak it a little bit, like really hunting that spot and being willing to move, but not being an absolute requirement to be in a different exact spot. You make a really good point. This year, I have only found, I think 2 sheds, and they were little spikers. And historically, I would make a serious effort to find more sheds. Like it was really important to me. And scouting was almost secondary or third on the list. But this year, I am really focused on scouting. And that was one of those things that you're talking about is going slow, not even thinking about antlers. Like antlers are, if you step on one, great. But man, slow down, because I want to get as much in as possible because like we said at the beginning, I'm doing all this shit like after a job visit before dark, and my wife's not, I didn't say I'm going scouting, but she's expecting me home for dinner and all this crap. And so, trying to squeeze it in, and I find myself walking a lot of perimeters instead of the insides. And while I'm okay with that, but it's going slow. I'm not a fan of snakes. And so if I, cause I've seen a couple already and they're little garter snakes, but if I see a snake, my brain says time to go, and just taking a beat and sticking with it because I can't afford to not scout. So That was one of those things. So it's slowing down, not focusing on antlers, and really reading the woods this year was a big one for me.
Yeah. Those. That's all of the sheds I've ever found over 20 years. That's it.
You're kidding me.
No.
And is it because you've been focused on scouting?
I've never gone shed hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just me. Like, and honestly, almost all of those are within the last 5 years.
That's impressive.
Because my scouting went up.
Yep.
Because usually I didn't scout at all. I would just go in during in season and do a piece. I would do a bunch of e-scouting, and then I would read the sign as I went in.
Yeah.
And that's where I became like the 120 king.
Mm-hmm. Because
the first 120 that walked by, I was like, I'm smoking. I have no idea what's here. So like this thing's dying. So as I started scouting more, then I started finding more sheds.
Sure.
But I don't shed hunt at all.
I love picking up sheds. Don't get me wrong. I still get excited no matter what size antler it is. And I hope that never goes away too. But I really needed to make it a priority this year to not. Nope. It's not you. Antlers. Nope. Really don't do it. Don't turn the dial. You don't have to turn it up. Stop it. It's not you. Nope. You're not imagining it. It's actually fading out. That was the first half of the Mobile Hunters Dojo Angell Road Outdoors podcast collaboration. We both met up this week and had not really anything scheduled for this week, so we recorded an episode and decided to split it. So if you want to listen to the second half where the stuff gets good, not that this was substandard podcasting or conversation. Do not get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But if you want to hear the other half of this conversation with Matt at the Mobile Hunters Dojo, please go over to the Mobile Hunters Dojo podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and I would imagine anywhere where you can get podcasts, and enjoy the second half of this podcast. I don't know if you guys like this or not, but thank you for listening this far, and we will talk to you again next week.